There's a lot of hubbub about L. Ron Hubbard lately. The worst.
Okay, yeah, that was considerably worse than me. Okay.
I hear them in the room. They liked it.
I don't think so. No, I agree to disagree.
All right, so come on, let's get to the serious stuff.
Oh, please.
All right.
Please.
So AJ Plus recently did a really, really interesting video on the auditing system within the Church of Scientology. And also, HBO just recently released a documentary called Going Clear that was directed by Alex Gibney. So the whole point is to kind of uncover and unravel what happens at the Church of Scientology. Let's start off with the AJ Plus video and the auditing system that they use. Take a look.
Basically, she had me close my eyes pretty much immediately. She says, I want you to think back to the earliest painful memory that you have. I thought, all right, let's go softball here. So I talked about crying in my crib. After I finished telling her about it, she said, okay, now I want you to go back and tell me again. I went over and over the memory, and then she told me to go to a pleasure moment, I think is what she called. Any time in my life of something positive, and I talked about being a kid and eating oranges. Then at the end she said, I'm gonna count down from 5, and when I count down, I'm then gonna say canceled. And when it's canceled, it means it will no longer affect you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, canceled. And I opened my eyes. The whole thing really felt like pop psychology. It is so vague. I don't think anything was clear to me, and I don't think that's the point. What state would someone have to be in to even come into the Church of Scientology? And then from there, want to start taking a class when no one really had explained to them anything. When I left, I was like, peace, I'm out. You're not gonna mess with my mind, mm-mm.
So it's about time somebody did a report where they went in and witnessed what happens firsthand. So I'm glad AJ Plus did that. And it's also time that somebody did a documentary on this. Now look, these guys at Scientology, I mean, they go after people full bear. You know, when anybody says anything negative about them, lawsuits, this, that, and the other thing. But we got to get past this, right? And so many former Scientologists have come out and said all these things about what's actually happening. Now we have the full details.
Yes.
Which are amazing!
The full details are amazing. So as I mentioned, Alex Gibney just recently did a documentary about the Church of Scientology called Going Clear. It's on HBO if you guys want to check out the full thing. And there were many revelations that were revealed within the documentary. So I want to share some of them with you. So this whole thing about Xenu, like what is that? Where did it come from? Well, according to the documentary, 75 million years ago, a galactic dictator named Xenu froze people and dropped their bodies onto volcanoes.
Obviously.
From there, the disembodied spirits, or thetans, apparently jumped into newborns' bodies. According to Hubbard, these multiple thetans, is that the right way to say it?
I think so.
Thetans, crowded into our bodies and the source of our anxieties and fears.
Of course. So a couple of things here. This reminds me of the stories we do with my 4-year-old son, right? So he'll say, then we'll talk about Galactus and Silver Surfer and how they fight, and then he'll ask, did he throw him into a volcano? But this child stories is what they all believe.
It's
amazing. It's amazing. So the AJ Plus story, they go in, and it's such rudimentary brainwashing, right? And it's so obvious, but you have to understand L. Ron Hubbard, when he came up with this, they didn't know that much. I mean, he's there at that point, they're figuring out psychology, they're trying to figure out, there's the cults that are coming up, and they're all doing some sort of brainwashing. So he's like,
why don't I get on this?
Right, Xenu and the volcanoes, and then the thetans come out, and then they get into our bodies, and you got to pay me a lot of money to make sure I can get those thetans out of your body.
Yeah, it's insane. Okay, so Hubbard has gotten married a few times, and apparently he really scared one of his ex-wives. Okay, so according to the documentary, when Sarah Northup, Hubbard's second wife, threatened to leave him unless he got psychiatric help, he reportedly kidnapped their daughter Alexis. According to written accounts from Northup, Hubbard told her he cut Alexis into little pieces and dropped her in a river. Then he would call back and tell Sarah that their daughter was alive.
Okay, so he didn't, as far as I know, he didn't actually kill the girl, but look at the crazy stuff that this guy's saying. And you might now begin to understand why Scientologists hate psychiatry so much for two reasons. One, this guy's ex-wife is nagging him to go to a psychiatrist. He's like, that's it, psychiatry kills. That's part of my new tenets of my religion, right? And number two, it's competing with, in their mind, with Scientology. Because Scientology wants you to come to them to help you with your problems. What's your first pain? And don't worry, it's canceled. You tell me all your secrets. They go through these audits, and in the audits, they reveal the deepest things about them, and then you have that as blackmail to use against them.
That's absolutely right. So former church member Sylvia Spanky Taylor, who was once the liaison between the church and John Travolta, was sent into Rehabilitation Project Force, or RPF, or what she described as the prison camp where you'd go for re-indoctrination. According to the film, when sent to the RPF, people would have to do hard labor for 30 hours on, 3 hours off, eat table scraps, and sleep on dirty, wet mattresses. How is that legal? Like, how is this all happening?
So, look, because nobody reports it. If you do, you get ostracized from your family and friends. These guys come after you. And this is classic brainwashing. You make them go through, and by the way, sometimes religions do this too, go through incredible sacrifice and harsh conditions. And in those states, you often wind up imagining things, and then you think you had a vision, and then you're like, oh yes, that's right, Vishnu exists, Jesus exists, L. Ron Hubbard just came down and told me. That's because your body's going through incredible trauma and your mind plays tricks on you. So it's done on purpose.
It's insane. It's incredible that people were so intimidated and so scared by Scientology and its leaders that they wouldn't report any of it.
So two more things about that. Hubbard created this thing that they call ethics, or punishments, for his auditors who made mistakes during sessions. That's why when Tom Cruise said at one point in one of his wacky tapes that we found, when he said, I put ethics on myself, we were like, what the hell does that mean? That means, like Opus Dei, which is a Catholic cult, he punishes himself. Like, he puts ethics on himself, right? And so,
I didn't know he was into that kind of thing.
Interesting, right? They create this aura where the weak come in and are given purpose.
Yes.
You see, they break them down psychologically and they rebuild them in their own mold. And once they've done that to you psychologically, you're hooked. It's super hard to break. And they prey on actors. And I actually literally talked to a Scientologist who had left who told me this. Because when you first get into LA, it's so hard to break in, and so many Scientologists are powerful and connected, and if you are in with them, and as one story here also reveals, you start getting more and more jobs. And all those young actors are vulnerable, they're insecure, they're in a tough industry, so these guys come in and they hook them with, oh yeah, Tom will help you, John will help you, whoever will help you, right? And they get in, and then they get broken down mentally, rebuilt into these robots, and that's it, they're hooked.
Well, they also had some run-ins with the government. The FBI did one of their largest raids ever onto the Church of Scientology. And the Church of Scientology wanted to have tax-exempt status. So what did they do? They actually infiltrated the government, according to this documentary. So in the 70s, many Scientologists were directed to get jobs in the Department of Justice and IRS offices in order to steal documents against or relating to the church. Damn.
These guys, man, they are very serious. They're not a fly-by-night cult, okay? They were deeply entrenched. They dug in, and they told the IRS, "You're not coming for us. We're coming for you." Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
Okay, that's crazy. But this is not the forces of good. This was the forces of cuckoo land.
Yep. And apparently, at one point, John Travolta wanted to leave the church, but since they had audited him so often, they had a lot of dirt on him. So they allegedly convinced him to stay by blackmailing him. It's incredible. So
They called it a black PR package that they had on Travolta. Travolta thought that he was not being taped because they would normally tape the audits.
They were secretly taping
like,
it.
oh, tell us your deepest problems and what you did wrong. By the way, this is a lot of so-called established and mainstream cults also do this. For example, Skull and Bones at Yale. That's a fraternity. John Kerry went to it. George W. Bush went to it. So some of the leaders of our country went to the Skull and Bones. They do the same trick. They put you in a coffin, according to reports, right? And they have you confess the worst things you've ever done, and then they have you for life. Because They're all that fraternity of brothers, as they say, and they all know the worst things about one another. So there's a line. You can't cross them. So Travolta thought he wasn't being taped, but they secretly taped him anyway.
Yeah.
And then they got the black PR package, again, according to the documentary here. And they said, you want to leave? We know the worst things in the world about you. God knows what those are.
Why are they so obsessed with people staying? Like, do people pay them to be part of the church?
First of all, of course, the audits not only are expensive, but they get more and more expensive the further up you go, okay? So if you're Tom Cruise and John Travolta and you're on 128th level, oh, they've robbed you of so much money, right? That's point one. Point two is cults are built to make sure that they keep their members, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, the original cults are the religions. And same thing, the Old Testament talks about like, no, we're the Israelites. The Canaanites are terrible. The Philistines are terrible. You never go to them. It's our God, the God of Israel, right? And so in that it goes through Christianity and then Islam. And they keep saying multiply, 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 because we got to have a bigger force than they do. Mm-hmm. And the cults work the same way, okay? We got to have a bigger force. You can't ever leave. Mormonism, same thing in this regard, that if you try to leave being a Mormon, they will hound you to the end of the earth. Ben's mom's a Mormon. She left the Mormon religion. They followed her all the way to France, and they knocked on our door. The agents from the Mormon tabernacle, from the church. Seriously, they were like, you left the church, and they'd been sending her letter after letter after letter.
Wow.
This is your last warning, and you better get back in line, etc.
You don't get it.
Yeah, but they did. You know what they did? They excommunicated her, and then parts of her family never talked to her again.
That's their bad.
Of course it is, but that's how cults work.
I know, and that's why a lot of people do stay in certain religions. They're afraid of being excommunicated by their family members, by their friends, by their loved ones. It's really sick that, they use that type of intimidation and blackmail to keep people, members of their religion.